Well, good morning, everyone. And every day we rise is a great day to be alive. And welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talks morning show. I'm James Slim Overton, and I'm here with co-hosts Leah Drake Smith and Thomas the Colonel Chapman. And we have a special guest with us, Ashley Watts, and we'll be getting to him very shortly. First, I want to say all those Kansas City fans out there, or if you want a Kansas City fan, but you were just rooting for them last night, what a great day! What a great game! And they tried to steal a saying from us Cowboy fans. I heard them say, "Colonel, how about them Chiefs?"
Cowboy, yeah, how
Now
about
that's a Cowboy thing. How about those Cowboys? I think they have that trademark, so it might be a lawsuit down the road, but we'll see. We'll see. But anyway, it was a good game, and the halftime. I think that's the only reason Leah watched. She said she watched the whole game. She
The
heard
entire game for a
the
change.
entire game, waiting for a shirtless Ursher, not Usher, but Ursher,
Ursher,
like they used
Ursher.
to say a long time ago. But anyway, let's get started. We have, and here on Portsmouth Coffee Talk, we always celebrate Black History Month or Black History all year round, but it's nationally recognized during the month of February. And one of our things is sort of recognizing local people, local residents that have done some significant things in the city in the Hampton Roads area. Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Newport News, and Hampton. So we wanted to focus on a Portsmouth family here that many of you might know, and it might date some of you if you remember the watch market. I think we have sorry, I had to bring on somebody from around Atlanta. Wesley Van is with us. But
Hey,
anyway, you
Wes,
might remember
good morning.
the Watts family and
Yeah,
the
go for
produce
it.
they used to put out there, and the Watts Market. And some of you might remember later on Mabry's Market, which was first, it was Watts Market before that. But Ashley is going to come on here and tell us a little bit about the family and some things that we might not have known about the family. So, and then we'll probably get into Seaview Beach. You saw the promotion for the show about Seaview Beach. That's going to date some people too, but it's also going to be some information for people who don't know about Seaview Beach and why it existed back there in the day. So, welcome, Ashley. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here and also a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to have you here. And the Watts family. Did the Watts family were they a Portsmouth? I know back in the day, Portsmouth was a small city, and a lot of people came from Nasmyth County and Norfolk County and other places. But was the Watts family, were they originated in the city of Portsmouth, or
No,
eventually?
actually in Norfolk County at the time, which is now Chesapeake.
Mhm.
But a lot of my family did settle in Portsmouth. We had a lot of family members on Effingham Street and over in Glasgow Street area. But my family, the original home place is in what is now known as Western Branch, Chesapeake. And of course, all that has been torn down. The interstate came through and took the property. But my family has been heavily involved in business throughout the area. Um, we had a 500-acre farm up in Chesapeake, Western Branch, and we hired probably over 500 people at one time. And we sold produce, and we harvest our own produce, and we sold it at our own markets.
Hmm.
And we had open air markets throughout Portsmouth and Chesapeake. We had a market on Portsmouth Boulevard, Watts Market, and there was a lot of that type business that went on as far as the farm was concerned. Now, my father, his name was Bruce Bruce Watts. In his early days, he had a job at the Naval Shipyard, and back in the day, it was you were lucky to get a job in the shipyard because they had good benefits and they paid good money. But he really wanted to do something else. He wanted to do something else with his life rather than just work at the shipyard. But what he noticed, my father noticed, was that when the ferry came in from Norfolk, it, of course, was full of sailors who needed a ride from the ferry terminal in downtown Portsmouth to the shipyard. And what he noticed was the cab services in Portsmouth at that time were run by white people. So what they would do, they would pick up the white sailors and take them to the shipyard and leave the black sailors standing there waiting. And if there was any room, then the black sailors could get into a cab and go over to wherever they needed to go. So my father says, well, there's a need. So what he did was he just established his own taxi service, Safeway Cabs. That was back in approximately 1944. Safeway Cab Service has been in business for over 80 years, and it's still in business, and it's black owned.
Wow. Ashley, let me take you right back to the land right quick. You said the family owned about 500 acres in what is Western Branch now.
That's right.
Seemed like back in that time, it had to be near or during the Jim Crow era. How did your family acquire that kind of land? Was it something that was passed down, or was it a deal after slavery or something like that, or was it acquired during Reconstruction? During those times did your family, get a hold of that much land?
Yeah, that land was passed down from, I don't know, way back to my great-great-grandmother and her husband. Somehow they were able to purchase that land. And it was, like you said, was handed down through the generations. And it is located, now that land is where the Chesapeake City Park is, out in Western Branch. There's a Chuck E. Cheese on the corner, and a recreation, Chesapeake Recreation Center. All that land behind that recreation center was the farmland.
And I think during those times, I think blacks that acquired that kind of land or got it passed down, the reason they were able to hold on to it because it probably was something that other people might have looked at and didn't see it as useful, didn't see it as was something that they could use, or they would have taken it or tried to take it.
Exactly.
So you fell into that category where they say, hey, well, let them have it, nothing we can do with it. Because during those times, whatever we had, some people would try, white people would try to either take it from you if they saw a profit in you. That's why I asked that question,
right.
How did y'all come about that?
Well, we were able to hold on to it. Back to the cab service.
Okay.
Well, it started out with about 12 taxi cabs, and eventually we had, we had about 24, 25 cabs. And my father also had he owned a restaurant tavern above the taxi stand at the corner of Chestnut and High. And I was just a kid at the time, so I didn't really have any personal experience there, but I can remember my dad saying how the sailors would come in and it was just a big ocean of white hats, the sailor hats. That's where they came to party. So what was happening was the sailors would leave the shipyard and take the ferry over to Norfolk. And that's where they would go to party and have a good time. So when my dad saw that, he says, well, maybe we can have a place here in Portsmouth and the sailors don't have to go to Norfolk. they can come here to my place, and that's what they did. So we had my uncles. I had one uncle who owned a bus service, a bus line, and it's been said that there were only 3 Black-owned bus companies in the entire country. And he ran a bus service from the Crestwood area into Portsmouth, back and forth and I don't know what who his patrons were. They're probably working people who lived in the Crestwood area and worked in Portsmouth or worked in Norfolk, and they would come into Portsmouth and maybe take the ferry or the tunnel bus over to Norfolk. But I can remember those buses coming by our house. We lived on Elm Avenue, and I can remember us as kids playing outside, and the bus comes by, we would wave and they would blow the horn, that kind of thing. That was way back in the day.
Yeah, well, I guess it's open for the other co-hosts if you have questions or you have a comment concerning what he said so far.
It's amazing that he saw the need and he was able to go out to address the need as the needs presented themselves.
That's right.
I never realized. I was with a group of young entrepreneurs last night, young folks, and I said, my goodness, in talking to them, and they have no knowledge of what has been provided for so many years for African Americans in the city of Portsmouth. Of course, they had no knowledge of Safeway cabs. They had no knowledge of the bus service that was offered by your family or of the Watts Market. And I felt a little aged in there, in as much as even when I mentioned Seaview Beach, they didn't have a clue. So, so it's important that we get this information out. They're young entrepreneurs, but you need to know upon whose shoulders you stand, because so many others saw the need, took advantage of the need, and provided the need. And that was the one thing that the Watts family did throughout the history of Portsmouth and the Hampton Roads area, really, when you look at the services that they provided. So I salute the Watts family here doing Black History Month for all that has been done, not only back then, but even some things that have taken place since that time here in the city of Portsmouth. So I'm just happy that we're able to get this information out there so that they can see, and especially when we get to Seaview Beach. I'm not going to jump ahead of the show, James, but yes, it was valuable information. Valuable information.
My
Yeah,
uncles, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ashley.
My uncles, Irvin and Wilbur, were real estate developers. I don't know if you're familiar with Drum Creek. It's in Chesapeake. Yeah. It's where the Russell Library is located. Yes. That entire area was once farmland owned by the Watts family. And it was divided into lots and infrastructure, and each lot was developed and sold so that people could build their own homes on it. So if you go into that area right now, you will see homes that were built back in the 50s and 60s on land that belonged to us. Also, another development was up in Nansemond Shores. That's up past Bellevue, up in that area. And Suffolk, the same thing with that. The land was divided into lots and sold to people who built their own homes on those lots. My uncles were also, and my father as well, were involved in Christmas tree sales.
Yes.
We were out there in the street selling Christmas trees. But I didn't learn this until recently. My uncle at one time was the #1 Christmas tree distributor in the South.
Wow.
He brought in 50,000 Christmas trees per year in 7 boxcars and distributed those trees throughout the South. So it was big time. It was a big time for Black people. And we also, during that time, we had Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mhm.
had segregation.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that we had to plow through, and
Mm-hmm.
some things we were able to do, and some things we were not able to do.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that story about one time you and your family went somewhere in North Carolina or were coming back and wanted to stop somewhere.
Yeah,
And the waitress told you that, well, we don't serve Negroes.
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
I assume that's the way she said it. But
Yeah,
Just
she
we
soon.
did.
don't serve Negroes. But, it was one of your brothers, Bruce Jr., I guess he Bruce Jr., was could pass. And that's how y'all ate that day.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
sure that's
Yeah,
so y'all had your share of dealing with well, maybe not you as much, but dealing with the Jim Crow people out there.
yeah. It was there, and it's something we had to live with, and had to get around. We had to get
Mhm.
around, and it wasn't easy, but looking back on it, that was a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know any other way of life. You were telling me about one day that my sister saved your life.
Yeah. One day I was when y'all had moved to Brighton, and I was friends with the Loach, and I was over there as a little kid, so I ventured down. Most of our neighborhoods always abutted a white neighborhood. So if you walk 2 blocks, you were in the white neighborhood. So I just was walking down there, and evidently crossed the line, and all these little white boys came, and they will get ready take me out. And your sister Faye, who I ended up going to Union with, came over and said, "Don't mess with him." And they all just said, "Okay," and went away. Now I don't know if Faye, was kind of a tomboyish and she could fight, or they just respected her, as a
Yeah,
neighborhood. But I knew I
yeah,
was in trouble even as a little guy. But uh, but that's one of those experiences I had, and that with your family.
yeah. Faye was tough.
I'm
You
here
know,
because of that.
we sold a Christmas tree one day to a white lady, and she wrote us a check for whatever it was, $5, $6, whatever. And so she looked at me and she said, who owns this lot? Who is it? I said, "That's my father over here. We're running this place." And she said, "Oh my God, if my husband knew that I bought a Christmas tree from a black man, he would just go crazy." So she took the tree and went on with it. Do you know she canceled the check? She stopped payment on the check. She
Wow.
And
refused
kept the tree.
to pay a black man for that Christmas tree, even though she kept the tree.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
what do? You just have to let it go. You have to
That's
Yeah.
let
right.
it go.
You had
Yeah,
no recourse.
yeah, exactly. And
And I'm
then
sure a
we
lot
had,
of businesses, a
well,
lot of
we had
businesses went through.
I'm sorry,
Go
we had
ahead.
an
I'm
open
sorry.
air market across the street from the Circle restaurant,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
and we couldn't go over to the Circle and go inside to get a sandwich for lunch or whatever. They had a door in the back of the
In the back.
restaurant, and
Yes.
and you couldn't even go in that door. It was for colored only, but you could
Mm-hmm.
not go in. You stood outside, ordered what you wanted, and then they would bring it out to you. Of course, they wanted to take your money, but you could not go inside.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even after the Circle was integrated, I still had that shadow, over me,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that when I went in, I wasn't really welcomed. But
Hmm.
but
But the
again,
law
that's
said,
society.
Yeah. Good morning, Ashley. I do remember that right there at the Circle, and then down the street at the Dixie Drive-In.
That's
Yes.
right. That's right.
It was the same thing. I think your father had that corner because when you weren't selling Christmas trees or produce, it was Mount Herman's skating rink actually, and we used to skate out there
Right.
under
Right.
that shed because it was a place that we could skate in. But the Dixie Drive-In was on the other side, and they had a window that we could go order a hamburger. The only problem with that window, though, it was the dumpster trash dumps
Yeah,
are right
good.
outside of it. And
Mhm.
at that time, we had to buy from that same window that they were throwing garbage out of. And
Yeah, that's true.
so it
It's
was.
right
Hey,
after.
let me ask you a question. I think I once heard how your father, the actual starting of Safeway Camp is. I love the story, and I've always wanted to ask you. From what I understand, it was late one Friday night that your father saw the sailors, and he was by himself at the time. And what was it? He saw the sailors and had his car and ended up running them back and forth.
Yeah, he had his own car before he established the cabs company. You know, he was taking sailors back and forth, you know, and charging 25, 30 cents or whatever it was in his personal car.
Right. And they got home late,
Got
and
home
your
late.
mama said, "Where you been?"
Look, he got home late anyway. Yeah, I failed to say that he was a professional bondsman. He was the
No.
only black bondsman in the city of Portsmouth. So anytime anyone got arrested and they needed to get out of jail, they would call him. There were
Mm-hmm.
times when the city of Portsmouth had a vehicle and they called it Black Annie. And what it was like a bus or whatever, but it would pick up people from when they raided places. Like they would
Mhm.
raid a bootlegger place and they would maybe take 25 or 30 people to jail. And some of those people were like undertakers, school teachers, you know, just people having a good time. They'd haul them all to jail for illegal bootlegging or whatever. My father would go down and get each one of them out of jail, of course, for a fee. And that's where he made his money. He made most of the money that he made it through the bonding company.
Mm.
Sure did.
Well, and Leah, I guess you can remember in West growing up, having all these businesses and uh, people around that could do things for us in our communities. It was a normal thing for us because we really didn't know any different. We very seldom went outside of our communities to do anything
Right.
because we had people. And then you had the entrepreneurs like the Watts family. They had several things going on, in order
Oh,
to
that's for
support the
sure.
family and also to support the communities. So, Leah, you mentioned about the young entrepreneurs. They need to every once in a while have a session where they learn about the history of all the
Exactly.
different people that came
Exactly.
along. You know,
Mhm.
because and these were people. You mentioned your uncles, Ashley. I think one of them was a dentist and one of them was an attorney or
Right.
a
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, they could have very well, just stayed in their lane and done what they did and been okay. But they also outside of that provided jobs for other people, and also I think you told me they sent people to school, in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. They helped a lot of people, a lot of prominent people through college.
Mm.
And they did. You know, they didn't brag about it, but a lot of people out there listening now actually know who helped them through school.
Mhm.
Of course, I'm not going to mention any names, but we did. My fathers, they did.
Yeah,
Mm.
Yeah,
if they
doctors.
heard it, they probably would speak up and say, "Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
helped me."
Well, that's a great example of how our neighborhoods should be, and
exactly.
yes, and what gets me is you talked about uh, being on the real estate business, but in home ownership is the start of generational wealth if we work it correctly. And you see, you have especially when you look at the redlining, and then the next, and now we're seeing the kids or the grandkids uh, inheriting the parents' house and either selling out to get a Cadillac or whatever, or letting the state come or the city come and get it because they're too lazy to pay the taxes on it. And so that real kills me with that. But home
That's true.
ownership is the quickest way to generational wealth. But the other piece I want to say is you talked about Jim Crow, what led to integration. But if you look at the two of those, the real equalizer is all money is green, and where we spend our money is an equalizer to beat back a lot of the impending Jim Crow, because Jim Crow is coming back, especially with this guy that's running on the Republican side. He wants to bring, and actually all the Republicans want to bring back Jim Crow.
Exactly.
If for those who don't know, you look at the bill that they're trying to give Ukraine aid, and that is a national defense, national strategy piece that we need to do to keep Putin, because we're killing Russians pennies on a dollar. But these pro-Russian senators in the Republican Party put 50 amendments on there to kill DEA, defense, and diversity, inclusion issues, to try to kill that. And so that should tell people that they are against what? Black, brown, and yellow people. And we just need to get out here and vote.
Yeah.
And put them out. Because, you have a whole party that does not want us to even be on this show.
Yeah. You talk about neighborhoods and doing the right thing in the neighborhood. I can remember a time, on one occasion, where we lived at the corner of Wilcox and Elm, and a lot of kids in the neighborhood would gather at our house. It was like a magnet. That's where kids came. They came to play with baseball, football, whatever. But one summer, my father decided that he was going to have a picnic for all the neighborhood kids. And it was going to be out at the home place out in Hodges Ferry, which is Western Branch. So what he did was he made an announcement that we were going to have the big picnic out in Chesapeake. And he brought in about 10 taxi cabs to our house. And all the kids jumped into the cabs, and we took them out to the home place where we had hot dogs, hamburgers, cold drinks, and games, and just a good time. And then the cabs showed back up and brought the kids back home. And I thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was something.
Yeah.
I can remember events like that happening in our neighborhood and in many neighborhoods, of color throughout the city of Portsmouth, where people just made sure that the children had something to do.
Giving back. You have to give
back.
He also gave free taxi cab rides to people who wanted to go vote. Take them to the polls.
Yeah, that was very important.
Especially when Holly was running for mayor.
Yeah.
Yep, sure did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Here's Wesley, Ashley, I wish you would have kept the canceled check, or did you keep the canceled check to that? Fast forward years, you know how some businesses will have the first dollar that they made and they'll have it all, have it mounted. It'd been great if you had that canceled check. And if she's living and her husband is living, it'd be a nice thing to say, oh, we still kept the check from Mrs.
Yeah, we kept the check and you kept the tree.
Yeah. You owe us $6.
With it,
plus
interest. Yeah,
plus 50 years of interest.
Inflation. Yeah.
They couldn't say anything because you'd have it there for for prosperity, and it would be a great history lesson for others.
And
How did y'all manage to acquire waterfront property? I guess we're going to the Seaview.
yes, I was hoping we did this transition.
The waterfront property of Seaview Beach at a time that I know a lot of the families that wanted waterfront property couldn't get it. So that's how they ended up. I know parts of my family and a lot of Mount Herman, we ended up down in Hereford, North Carolina.
Right.
And had that farm that man sold along the Bequemins River. Now, we couldn't buy property in Virginia. So how did y'all manage to come up with that?
Okay. Well, that gets into Seaview Beach, but let me give one more thing. A family, extended family member. I'd like to tell you just a little about Colonel Fred Cherry.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with Colonel Cherry?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Colonel Cherry his sister was married to my uncle, so we kind of called Cherry our uncle. He was married. His sister was married to my uncle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cherry was born back in 1928, and he was brought up in poverty, basically, but he was able to go to college, and he graduated from Virginia Union University. And Slim, I'm sure that means a little something to you, right?
A little something.
Little something.
He graduated from Virginia Union in 1951, and then he went into the Air Force as a into their training aviation training program. And in 1952, he earned his pilot wings. So, to make a real long story short, he was a fighter bomber pilot, and he was black. Okay, he's a black man. This is back in the in the late 50s and early 60s. You had a black man flying a jet for the United States Air Force. It was almost unheard of. It was the greatest thing in the world as far as I'm concerned. But he did over 100 missions, bombing missions in Korea. And in the early 60s, he was ordered to Vietnam. So what he did was he went up to New York at a place where they were manufacturing aircraft, and he picked up a brand new jet. And his orders were he and her squadron, Colonel Cherry, at the time, he was probably a lieutenant, maybe a major, but he was in charge of the squadron to go over to Vietnam. And their first stop was supposed to be in Biloxi, Mississippi. But on the way to Biloxi, Colonel Cherry made a turn to the left, and he went over to Suffolk. And he called his sister from the aircraft and told her, he said, "Look, sister, I'm in the area. I'd like to swing by." So she says, "Well, where are you?" He says, "Well, come on out your front doors, come on out in the yard, and you'll see me." So here he is up, 10,000 feet above her house. And then he makes a dip right down towards her house and comes as low as he possibly can. And then he goes back up into the air with the afterburners burning. And this is in downtown Suffolk. You hear me?
Oh, wow.
They're flying this jet in Suffolk, showing off, So he was in charge of the squadron, and the rest of the squadron were white guys, and they went on to Biloxi, and he told them that he would meet him there the next day. So he spent the night over in Langley. He landed at Langley, and his sister went over and visited him, and he spent the night there. But then he goes on to tell you about how the flight over to Vietnam, they stopped in different places, in South Pacific and in Hawaii and those places. And of course, they had to do in-flight refueling. But in 1965, on October 22nd, he was on a bombing run. And the jet that he was flying was actually made for high altitude bombing. But what he was doing was low altitude bombing. His plane was hit by ground artillery, and he was shot down. So he ejected, and when he ejected, it crushed his shoulder and broke his wrist and broke his left ankle. He was immediately captured by the North Viet Cong, and he was taken over to what they call the Hanoi Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he stayed for 7 years.
Wow.
And he was tortured. He said that he was in solitary confinement for over 700 days. And he was tortured for over 90 consecutive days. And the type torture that he endured is, I can't even talk about it. You know, it makes me emotional. And to make Matt, the Viet Cong wanted him to give disparaging words about race relations in the United States back in the 60s. And he refused to do it. That's why he was tortured so badly. And so what they did was they put a Southern, I think it was an ensign from the US Navy pilot. They put him in the cell with Colonel Cherry, a white guy in the cell, hoping that they would become enemies and it would be just uncomfortable for them both, for both of them. But as it turned out, this guy, the white guy, his name was Halliburton. Halliburton actually saved the colonel's life. He nursed him back to health. I mean, the colonel was in really bad shape. You know, he was had infections in his abdominal area and his arm and his shoulder. I mean, right down to the bone. And they refused to give him medical treatment, but his friend saved his life. He actually nursed him every day back to health. And they became the best of friends.
Mm-hmm.
So just goes to show you that Black people have been doing great things.
Yes,
And
yes.
these are people that we don't even know about, you know, and if we don't teach our history, no one else will. We can't teach it in school anymore. They won't teach it. When I was it didn't exist.
That's a story. Yeah, that's a story that's been in my family for years. And you know what his middle name was?
Van.
It was Van. Yeah, he was Fred Van Cherry,
Okay.
and that's where we were related. As I used to think we were related as a kid because of his mother and my grandfather I think they were brother and sister. I think that's how far back that goes. And it's been interesting. I've always heard the stories of Fred Cherry, and I think he was one of the Tuskegee Airmen? He flew with them for a little while as well. Because when they came out, some of the family members, and Tim Reed in particular, was one of those was going to try to do his story as a movie, but they never could collaborate to get that whole thing going. But you're right. That's some of the family history in the city of Portsmouth, with its over 400 years of history that needs to be taught.
Exactly.
You know, it needs to be taught, and so that we understand who we are and where we came from. You know, and I got a feeling it might change a lot of that if these kids understood their foundation, the shoulders that they stand on. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it could make a great difference, though. You know, your father, Ashley, was in my life. He was one of my mentors. You know, I used to look forward uh, to him selling the Christmas trees.
Mm.
I looked forward to him selling the collard greens. You know, it was something that you looked up to because there was finally a black man that was that looked like me that was doing something.
Exactly.
You know, and my grandmothers, both of them, Mamie and Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
would make sure that we went over to buy because they had some of the best collard greens in the world. Now I'm here.
The best.
Best produce, not just collard green. The best
Oh,
produce. You got from what?
And peanuts too, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
yeah.
mm-hmm,
One other very important fact about Colonel Cherry. In
mm-hmm.
2018, the city of Suffolk built a brand new middle school out in Suffolk,
Yeah.
and they
That's right.
named it Colonel Fred V. Cherry Middle School.
That's
And
right.
it's out in the Burbage Grant area, out in
Yeah.
Suffolk.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So good. That's quite an honor to have a school named after you.
That is. That is.
So,
Yeah,
so
actually, got a comment from Tony Goodwin, who actually owns the building where the Safeway cab used to house, and he wants me to pass your number on to him, his number on to you, because they wanted to do something in that area to honor the Watts family.
That
So
would be great.
I'm gonna do that in the form of, you see a lot of murals being put up downtown
yeah,
in the downtown area.
Yeah.
So they want to do something like that for the Watts family. So I'm gonna pass his number
Yeah.
on to you so
Great.
you all can communicate.
Good.
I think it needs to be something permanent. So people, like, as we talk about, we want the next generation to know our history, and that's a good way, to have something permanent up there where people say, "Who is that?" And once the question starts, then the education can begin.
Again, if we don't teach it, no one else will.
exactly.
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Just
So
like they used to
James,
do in
can we
Africa, we have to pass it down.
pass it down? The griot, our
Yes.
griots must pass it down to our kids.
Exactly.
But can we transition? We have a less than 20 minutes left, and can we transition
To the
to
beach.
Seaview Beach? Hey,
Okay.
Steve, huh?
Seaview Beach.
Seaview Beach.
I have a few facts about Seaview.
Yes, indeed. Wait,
Seaview
wait a
was
minute, Ashley. The main thing, like I said, in talking to those young people last night, they didn't have a clue. I was trying to tell
I
them where
know.
it was located. It was and the thing was, it was the best piece of the beach down there in Virginia Beach. It didn't have
That's
all the
right.
rip tides and all the currents and things going on. And what did you say? See you at Seaview.
See you at
That was the
Seaview.
slogan.
Yeah.
See you at
CUSTU.
Seaview.
That's
Okay,
right.
go ahead,
And,
Ashley.
and when
Well,
you get into it, Ashley, I was talking to Leah last week. I said, some of us might remember if we were small enough
yeah.
where when you went in the water and it was time to go up and get in the bumper cars or, on the rides, we just changed right on the beach.
Right on the
A
beach.
few adults held up towels.
Held the towels up. You got behind the tower and you changed your clothes and got
We
ready
just
for the
changed
bumper
clothes
car.
right on the beach.
Well, we had a bathhouse down there for that. If you wanted
Yeah,
to
Yeah.
use
there was a bathhouse, but most of us changed on the beach,
I
Ashley. I
don't
got
know.
to tell you that.
Our parents made that decision. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. But I can remember being a part of that changing right on the beach. The little kids did, at least.
Yeah.
Little kids,
Yeah.
Not
yes.
the adults. Not the adults.
Well, since we only have a few minutes left, let me give you a few facts. Seaview was established. Well, it actually began in 1944
Mm-hmm.
when 21 Black men, African Americans, got together. They pooled their money. That's how we were able to buy oceanfront or bayfront property. One man couldn't do it, but 21 men could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the money part at that time sounded like not a lot of money in today's times, but back in the day, it was a lot of money. The beach actually opened, or the pavilion actually opened in 1945 on Memorial Day. And I'm back and forth on some dates, but in 1947, Life magazine published an article about Seaview Beach,
Exactly.
and
So
they called it the most popular beach or African American beach in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And what it did was Seaview was able to bring out a lot of positive things about the Black society, middle and upper class Black people who were not even mentioned in the regular news media. We were just a hidden portion of society. We had our own society, but as far as the big overall society, we were not. We were just peons, I would guess you would say. But Seaview was used as a recreational area. It was a gathering for social clubs, all the Greeks were down there. You know, they would have their meetings there. We would have church groups come in for picnics and that type thing. It was, and it was a lot of ads were in the newspapers on a weekly basis. It was a place where local talent would come and perform. Talent that had no other venue, no other place where they could go to make a name for themselves. But not just local talent came to Seaview Beach. We had talent such as Louis Armstrong, Count Basie, Fats Domino, Ella Fitzgerald,
Cab Calloway,
Dizzy Gillespie, Cab Calloway, Ruth Brown, locally Ruth Brown. And those were just during that period, those were the top entertainers of that period. You know, and those are people who we had coming into Seaview Beach. On the open day, they had about 2,500 people just attending the open day ceremony. But what happened back in 1945, those investors paid $45,000 for a 6.5 acre beachfront. And there was already a building there, which turned out to be the dance hall area. So we kept that for that year. But what we needed there were amusements. We wanted to make this a big amusement park, a place where Black folks could come and be comfortable. So what we needed merry-go-round, we needed bumper cars, we need all that stuff. But where does a Black man go to buy a merry-go-round? Or where do you go to buy a roller coaster or whatever? We couldn't do it. So what we did was we leased a portion of the land to a jeweler, a white man who also owned Ocean View Amusement Park. His name was Dudley Cooper. He also had a jewelry store in Norfolk, and he owned and operated Ocean View Amusement Park. So what we did, we had a 5-year lease with him that was renewable. And he brought in the concessions and the amusements. And what he did was he brought in, and it goes in to tell you how much they would pay for these things. Like the merry-go-round was $25,000, and the bumper cars that cost like $50,000. And back in the early 60s, they went in. Well, what they did was they went in and they just brought in. They opened a picnic area, and they revamped the hotel. There was a hotel there that had 40 rooms in it. And people would come from all over the region for the hotel during the summertime. I can remember going to Seaview Beach as a child, and we would pack. My mom would cook fried chicken, make deviled eggs, you know, just big picnic baskets full of food. And the churches and clubs and everyone would be at Seaview Beach. That was the gathering place. We'd have the big picnics. I can remember they had a concession stand over there that sold hot dogs and hamburgers and fountain Coca-Cola drinks. I can remember the first Coca-Cola fountain drink I ever had was from Seaview Beach. I can remember it was. I can remember them dipping down and getting the ice and putting it in the cup. You know, because we didn't have anything like that. You know, that was the first time I ever had a Coca-Cola. I mean, a fountain Coca-Cola.
And Ashley, and maybe we need to mention that some of those investors were W.T. Mason, the attorney out of Norfolk, as well as Mr. Waters, Mr. William E. Waters, who was the principal of Oscar Norcom High School. He was
Yeah,
one of the principal investors in the Seaview Beach.
yeah, Attorney Mason was probably one of the first Black millionaires
Millionaires,
in
that's
the
for sure.
country.
Mhm.
That's right. I mean, it's been published that he was one of the first Black
Yeah.
millionaires in the country. And that's how we were able to get that land down there. Not only did they buy 6.5 acres for Seaview, they bought, I think it's like 65 or 70 acres next door
Parker.
to develop for vacation homes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they paid around $50,000 for that.
Mm.
So it doesn't sound like a lot of money in today's time, especially on the beachfront, you know?
Right.
It was a lot then.
Yeah.
You know, and for them to have made Life and Jet magazine, you know, Jet did a little chit chat on Seaview Beach, and all the stars who would come into town to just come to Seaview. And I was looking the other day, and I was just so upset I couldn't find it right away, but I will find it. I have pictures of us as children. Every time my relatives would come in from New York, the first place we would head would be Seaview Beach. We would spend
Exactly.
the entire day on the beach because you could bring your little food baskets and sit right there on the beach all day long. Didn't have a care in the world. And as James said, got out of that water, changed those clothes, got into those bumper cars, and then at night you heard the entertainment.
That's right.
It was
They had a huge ballroom.
Yes.
The ballroom was 300 feet long. That's the size of a football field.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you think about it. And upstairs, looking down onto the ballroom, were hotel rooms that had a balcony overlooking. And used to work. I worked on the gate, and I lived there. I lived there a couple of summers. You know, I can remember looking over the balcony. I was like 15, 16 years old, and I could stand there and look over the balcony and watch the people dancing and just having a ball, drinking beer, eating sandwiches, just having a good time, you know, and that was Seaview Beach. You know, I can remember at the gate, we would charge admission. Admission was 25 cents for an adult and 15 cents for a child. So, and the cars would be lined up
trying to get
into.
Got there early because you wanted a good spot on the beach.
That's right. And the parking lot was a huge parking lot. It wasn't paved. A lot of times the cars would get stuck in the sand.
Exactly.
But I can remember the cars on Shore Drive lined up to get in. And then on busy days, like especially on holidays, you might see as many as 50 or 60 charter buses parked next to the fence. And, you know, I can remember things happening down there. I was out on the gate, so I wasn't actually over on the beach side where the action was. But I can remember drownings would happen occasionally. You know, occasionally there were fights. You know, back in, I guess the beach had been in existence maybe 5 years or so, and they hired 10 police officers as security. And one night, a couple of sailors got into a fight, and 2 of the police officers went over and they were trying to break them up and you know, stop the fight. And one of the guns went off. The police officer's gun went off and struck the other police officer and killed her. And a lot of people don't know. Most people don't know that Seaview had kind of a private club thing down there, where you had to like know somebody to get in.
To get there.
And inside they had slot machines, crap tables, that kind of thing. You know, it was like wide open.
Almost like old speakeasy.
Yeah, exactly. And one day they got word that they were going to that the police were going to come and raid the place. And in fact, the police did. But by that time, they had gotten the slot machines out. Now, I know this for a fact. They had gotten the slot machines out, but the crap table was still there when the IRS or whoever it was came in. They arrested one of the managers, and they charged him with illegal gambling and selling whiskey. So,
Mm.
I mean, but that was Seaview Beach. You know, it was
That was
easy to
Seaview.
come and have fun.
You have to tell the good and the bad, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I said, what was the Parker Beach that was sitting right outside of it? I remember it was just all it was. It was like a beach bungalow.
Yeah,
And
exactly. It was next
mhm.
door, and
Yeah, did y'all own that? Was that part of? I never could figure out what that was all
no,
about.
it was separately owned by a black man. It was a tract of land that he bought as well, but he didn't have any concessions on the land. It was just it was a
Right, it was
beach.
just
It was nice.
bungalows.
Yeah, it was nice. And what would happen? When we were charging people to come in, but sometimes they would go over to the beach next door and go out into the water and come over to Seaview Beach by way of
Mm-hmm.
the water. So what they did at Seaview, they built a fence leading
In the
out into
water.
the water. So if you came over, you had to swim around that fence.
Yes, indeed.
And
Yes.
not a lot of people were able to do that, you know.
Mm-hmm. I remember that. I
But
remember
you know,
that well.
they became known as the best Negro resort in America, and
Exactly.
also the Black folks Coney Island. That's
Mm-hmm.
what
Yeah.
Seaview was known for. Yes.
You know, y'all talk about the all the celebrities that came there. What used to amaze me coming there and seeing our teachers there working during the summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thought you
We
got away from your
basically
teacher, and the first thing you see is Miss Parker or somebody right at the gate, or
Yeah.
you know.
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
that was
they hired like 100 people every summer, and
yeah,
like you said, there were people, there were school teachers and people who needed summer jobs, and
Yeah.
you know, it was a middle class, upper class type deal down there.
Yeah.
There were buses that came in from all over the state. You know, I can remember Lynchburg and Danville and Northern Virginia, Raleigh, North Carolina, the Outer Banks. You know, the buses would come to Seaview Beach. Black people didn't have any place else to go.
No place
You know,
else to
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, just like most other black businesses, when it opened up, well, we could go to Ocean View. We ran to Ocean
right.
View,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Seaview just couldn't compete with that.
Right.
Didn't
Had
compete.
had the same things there at Ocean View, but maybe a little better.
Mhm.
But it was just an opportunity for us to go, and we just took that opportunity. And Ocean View, I mean, Seaview Beach couldn't compete. I say one last thing about the bumper cars. You know, when you were small enough, you had to get in there with someone. But
Right.
when you got large enough, you could drive them by yourself. So what you would want to do is take somebody with you that you might have had a beef with or you didn't like,
Yeah.
and get in there, and that's the person you would concentrate on.
Oh yeah, you go for them. You go directly for them.
That's the
I
way you
used to
would get
like,
your anger out, and there would be no fight or nothing. You just get your anger out on that person, and maybe try to turn his car around or whatever. And but that was just a part of it. But great place for
Yes.
black people,
Yeah, and
and
one of
that
you know
was
one
put
big
together
thing
by
is,
black people.
you know, if you ask yourself, well, how did these people get to Seaview Beach? They had free bus service. Free
They
bus
surely
service.
did.
Buses leaving from Norfolk over at the corner of Church and Brambleton. It left every 15 minutes. A bus leaving to Virginia Beach and coming back to the same location. They also had a bus that left from the Carver Homes area in Portsmouth.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the Sportsplex is located right now.
Yep.
Mhm.
Every 15 minutes, a bus is leaving on weekends, free of charge, take you down to Seaview Beach and bring you back.
Real entrepreneurs. I'm going to get you there, and you're going to spend
Entrepreneurs.
your money when you get there.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
right. I used to love the fact that we could sneak into the old dance on my cousins. You know, my father was a lifeguard there, and we would sneak in that dance hall. Actually, I remember so well. And the old deacons of the church, you could find them in there
No,
There
no,
you
on
go.
Saturday night with brown suits on, shirt and ties. They're on the beach. Stacy had them suit shoes and white socks and wearing Old Spice. And they'd walk in there and sit at the bar and say, "Let me get a Two B's, let me get a Jack Daniels and Coca-Cola. Well, the Coca-Cola, just a Jack Daniels and Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
And I was a little boy. I said they would smell good, and the women would be all over them men. And I said, when I grow up, that's what I want to do. I want to drink Jack Daniels and Coca-Cola and
Coca-Cola.
use Old Spice.
And you lived up to that, right?
I did.
You were wearing Old Spice at Norfolk, I think.
I did. I did.
Everybody knew it.
I'm wearing some right now. So how about that?
Old Spice and Brute by Fabergé. Don't forget the pool that was on the beach. They had a pool on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the pool, but I don't recall a pool being there. Then
You don't recall it?
at Sunset Lake.
No, it was, I remember, well, unless I'm confused, does anybody else remember a pool being on the beach at Seaview?
I don't. I remember Sunset Lake having a pool and a kiddie pool. And what it
Right.
really was, it was a hole in the
In the
ground.
ground, that's
And
all.
they put the water in it because the lake was just the lake, but there was this little kiddie part to it that had I guess they tried to make a pool or something out of it. I can't remember exactly how they did it. Matter of fact, I was just talking about Sunset Lake the other night at Dexter King's funeral. And I was talking to Stevie Wonder, and I was telling them that my
Wait a
first
minute. You just can't
Back
drop a
up.
name like Stevie Wonder. You were sitting there with Stevie Wonder. You can't just say,
Yeah.
I was sitting, drop a name like that and keep talking. You got to,
This-
how did
this
that
was at
happen?
this was at the repast. And I said, because he had performed at both
Yes.
Sunset Lake
That's
and
right.
Seaview
And
Beach.
Seaview Beach.
And I forgot about that because he said, "Yeah, see you at Seaview." And I
See
was
you at
like, "Oh my
Seaview.
God,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah," because he was Little Stevie Wonder, and he
Little
was the
Stevie Wonder.
opening
Right.
act for James Brown.
James Brown.
That's
That's
who he
right.
opened up for. I remember that well. And we were just talking about that. What's the day? It was Thursday, Friday night, Saturday night,
Just what you
Saturday
need
night.
to mention, Wesley, at Dexter King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s son's funeral is what you're referring to.
Yeah, Dexter King.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Dr.
Mhm.
King's son. And
Yeah, I did see the picture of you with Stevie Wonder, though. I did see that picture.
he
But
performed
anyway,
it. Anyway, go back to Ashley and them. That's a whole nother Oprah show right there. I'll tell y'all about that later.
Well, pretty much in 1964, the Civil Rights Act came about, and that opened up everything to African Americans.
Mhm.
So instead of going to Seaview, now we were free to go down to the waterfront and down at Atlantic Avenue. We were free to go over to the big amusement park at Ocean View.
Mhm.
And that's what we did. So there was no more business at Seaview, and it closed down in 1965. And in
Mhm.
1966, the building was demolished.
Yes. Yes.
And that was the end of Seaview. So it was in its heyday for 20 years, a little
Mhm.
over 20 years.
and that was a good run. That was a good run.
It was.
Good run. And that's why the history should be remembered and should be talked about and passed on. But anyway, we had a good history lesson here today. And thanks, Ashley, for coming on and enlightening us about the Watts family in the city of Portsmouth and Norfolk County and Chesapeake and Suffolk. And talking about Seaview Beach and its origins and everything that you had to share. We really appreciate that.
It's
And
my pleasure.
any other
I'm
last minute
honored to
comments
do it.
from the host?
No, I accept, Ashley. Thank you so very much for bringing this information to us, especially to those young people out there who may not know or have not heard and about the amazing things that were taking place for African Americans in the Hampton Roads area.
Exactly.
We didn't just evolve from nowhere. There were
That's right.
many individuals who started businesses, who did great things in the area, and we need to share that information so they can know who they are and on whose shoulders they stand. So I want to thank the Watts family for all the time and energy and service that they provided to the Hampton Roads area. And thank you, Ashley, for all that you continue to do as well. Thank you so very much.
And thank you for inviting me.
And don't forget to submit the flyer, Ash.
Right. Yeah. Our class of 1965 at Norfolk High School, we are planning a reunion next year, and it's going to be a cruise on Carnival Sunshine out of Norfolk. And we're planning for May 12th, 2025. We have 40 cabins reserved on that vessel. And we hope to fill each one of them and maybe more. So we need to get the word out. Anyone who wants to take a cruise,
Exactly.
we're inviting anyone and everyone to come and join us on that cruise.
And we'll be rocking. We're doing the Norfolk Rock on the Carnival cruise. Carnival will never be the same again.
We'll get some details out to you.
Thank you. I'll get it
in
out.
the next day or so.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Appreciate that. And to the young folks, you know, you don't have to wait for shows like this to learn about the history. You know, you got Google now. You can just Google in about the city of Portsmouth, wherever you're from, and just look up, you know, the history of the Black history of the city that you're from, or whatever. You know, just get to know about this, and so you won't sit around and say, "Oh, I didn't know about that." You don't have to have lived it to know about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, one day we need to talk about that colored library.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you on Portsmouth Coffee Talks Evening Edition this Thursday. Guest and topic to be announced. And thanks again, co-host. Thanks, West, and especially you, Ashley. Appreciate you. Take care.
Wish
Bye.
we could say see you.
All right.
See you. Have a great
See you at Seaview. Okay.